Hi everybody, we're going to be talking about Hurricane Ian and its impacts on the Gulf Coast and how it can impact us here in the Tennessee Valley. Right now, this is a live look outside at Key West, and it's very wet, and if you notice, there's not a lot of traffic outside, and that's because there is evacuations at the Florida Peninsula, not the Panhandle, but the Peninsula, and they got some big impacts ahead of their way. Let's take a look at the graphics. We'll talk about more on that on the forecast cone here. So here's the interesting, actually I'll stand here. We'll look at the forecast here. Now, notice this is a Category 3 storm. What does that mean? Well, in essence, this is a major hurricane, and that's no exaggeration. Anytime it's a Category 1 or a Category 2 storm, that's serious, but it's not a major hurricane. That means you probably have winds 75 to 100 miles an hour. Right now, as of 8 o'clock this morning, we have winds 125 miles an hour. In fact, let me get out of the way here. 125 miles an hour with gusts of 155 miles an hour, moving north. Now, this was at 8 o'clock Tuesday morning. This is a bit dated by the time you probably see this. So now, if I understand correct, this has probably been the history of this has been moving over 10 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. That's about faster than most people run, give or take. And the pressure, now this number right here is an interesting number. Anytime that number gets lower, the stronger the storm is. And so that's another thing to look at. Now, again, notice winds are 125 miles an hour. That's going to get more intense. As it increases later on Wednesday afternoon, we can see winds up to 130 miles an hour. That's not even the gust. We're talking just winds itself. And you can see the radar. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But as it hits Tampa could be in some serious trouble later on. And even along the Florida western coast here, it will decrease to a Category 3 storm. However, there's going to be some serious storm surge here, folks. We could see 7 to 10 foot storm surge, and that's because of the strong onshore winds. They're going to blow all that water on shore. It's going to be some serious impacts on with this storm. And as it moves on to the north, now this is the tricky thing is, we don't, as of Tuesday morning, there's a lot of uncertainty where this could go. This could go more towards the east, impact the Carolinas, or towards the west. If that does happen by this weekend, Chattanooga and Tennessee Valley, North Georgia, could be impacted by that, mainly rain. We'll talk more about how much rain that could occur later on. But here's the latest watches and warnings. Hurricane watches and warnings all are set in place for pretty much most of the peninsula. If we notice the Panhandle here, again, this is Panhandle, this is Peninsula. The Panhandle is not really seeing much of way of warnings and watches, but there's again, hurricane warnings and watches in effect. Tornado watches are also in effect because there's a bit of twist in the atmosphere for that to happen as well. Here's the radar. This is really interesting here now. Again, you can see the outer rain bands from here, especially from Key West down. This is actually where we were looking at earlier. It was right here. You can see those rain bands just feeding into the storm. The winds are blowing this direction, and it's circulating here. So most of the winds are blowing in this general trajectory here. So, but the worst of the storm is right in this general area right here, and that's what you call the eye wall. In fact, let's look at the satellite. They'll detail a little bit better here. This is the satellite imagery, and as you can see, and let me step over here. It'll be easier to show you. Right in here is where the most strongest storm is. Now, the eye itself is the calm part of the storm, but right in here is the eye wall. That's where the strongest part of the whole hurricane is. And that's going to move right along. Here's Florida. Here's the Florida Keys. That's going to be moving right along to the northeast. Let's move on. Now, this is the ocean temperatures. This is one of the reasons why this is such a favorable area for a hurricane. You got ocean temperatures over 85 degrees. Now, notice it says 36 Celsius. Don't think this is Fahrenheit. This is actually this is Celsius. But if you convert that, this goes 85 or over to 90 degrees. So that's one reason. There's a low atmospheric upper level winds, so you put all that into factor here. That's another reason why we're seeing a hurricane out in the Gulf. And this is the anomalies, but basically the way you look at this is what is the temperatures that are above or below average and sea surface temperatures. And you can see all of that orange, and especially right over here near the Florida Keys, we got red. That essentially means we're a little bit above average for temperatures, for sea surface temperatures. And that's another reason why we're seeing a hurricane right now. Locally, here's the what we could see through Sunday. 2 to 3 inches of rain is not impossible, especially over the Blue Ridge Mountains it's all in where this goes and where it steers. Again, if the steering current pushes this towards the Carolinas, we won't see as much impact. The most impact we'll see will probably be Saturday or Sunday, but especially Saturday. We can see some breezy conditions. We can see winds around here 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts probably a little higher than that, around 35 miles an hour. So I don't think we'll see any tornadoes or any high impact weather like that, but it's definitely some gusty winds. It's definitely a possibility. So that's the way things look right now. Of course, what you're hearing now is probably dated at this point, but just, if you want to keep an eye on things, have a weather app, keep in tune to that, and stay tuned to the weather information as it comes available.
Scene 1, take 2.